Chapter 37. It was late when Del finally stumbled into his apartment. He literally didn't recognize the place, and not just because Patty was asleep on the new Salvation Army couch and Kwang Ha was sprawled out on the carpet nearby under a red blanket. Del shut the door and moved into the hallway. Willa and I could be seen sleeping in the second bedroom in the Semper Fi bunk beds. He wondered why they hadn't all gone home, and then he remembered they didn't have a car, and right now neither did he. He walked home. After staring in wonder at all the changes, he finally made it to his room, where his bed was made up with Patty's sheets and a fluffy comforter. Del planted himself face first on top of the mattress, and that's where he was only 5 hours later when the sound of the shower in the bathroom woke him up. It was not a normal noise. He'd never heard running water in his own apartment. Del opened his eyes and realized the sound was from the bathroom. He squinted at the digital eyes of his bedside clock and saw 5:21 a.m. Who would get up this early? It was one of them, and he had a good idea which one. Del would have given his left foot for another hour of uninterrupted sleep. He shut his eyes and suddenly saw himself minus everything below the ankle on his weaker side. That made him wonder if the injury meant he'd collect some kind of disability payment from the school district. He used his right foot to drive, and most people did, so he guessed the left foot didn't bring in as much cash in a settlement. Isn't that the way insurance companies worked? Everything had some kind of predetermined price? Maybe it was better to give up a left arm. And then there was a knock on the door, and the Del Duke internal idiotic discussion forum was interrupted by the voice of Patty Nugent. "Are you awake?" He wanted to say that he was now. Instead he answered, "Been up for hours." He hoped it sounded deeply sarcastic, but she answered, "Me too." Patty pushed the door open and entered, talking. "Social services is coming back next week. Until they find a permanent place for Willow, I think it would be easier if we just stayed here. I can't keep cleaning up after you." Del was silent, not because he didn't have an opinion, but because he didn't have the energy this early in the morning to scream at the top of his lungs. Patty forged on. "I saw a notice on the board in the laundry room. Unit 22, just down the hall, looking for a roommate." Del shut his eyes. This had to be a dream. Except that in his dreams, usually he was hiding, and often his body had mysteriously been painted bright blue. Del opened his eyes. Patty was already heading to the door. "I'm going to get the email address. It's not too early for you to send a message saying you are interested. It's temporary, just until we get this all straightened out." Del had seen Sadhu in the parking garage, but they had never even so much as said hello. Now, at an insane hour of the morning, he was sitting across from the man. The crazy Nugent woman had insisted that he send an email right away, and then, to his horror, his laptop showed an immediate reply. The guy who was just down the hall wanted him to come over right away and meet. Shouldn't the man be asleep? What was wrong with all these people? Sadhu cleared his throat and said, "I'm a vegetarian." Del nodded. Sadhu looked suddenly hopeful. "You are a vegetarian too?" Del shook his head. He wasn't going to lie, but he also wasn't going to go into detail about his meatloaf obsession. Because Del was so tired, he looked appealingly like someone who had been to mime school, or at the very least, believed strongly in the power of nonverbal communication. His answers were a series of head movements, punctuated by yawning, raised eyebrows, and semi-swallowed hiccups. And that is why he was approved as a roommate. Minutes after he took his seat, Patty Nugent came down the hall and wrote Sadhu Kumar a check for 1 month's rent for the second bedroom in Unit 22 in the apartment complex, while Del already rented Unit 28. She would cover his expenses living with Sadhu, and Del would continue to make the payment on his place. As he shook hands on the deal, Del found enough of a voice to make a statement. He said, "Spicy food gives me indigestion." Sadhu nodded his head as if he understood, but Del felt certain the guy was pickling peppers on his stovetop.